Ravi had always dreamed of owning his own home. For years he lived in small apartments, saving every coin and working late hours to reach his goal. When he finally bought a house in a well-kept neighborhood, he felt like he had reached an important milestone in his life. The house was not the biggest or the most expensive, but it was his, and that alone gave him a deep sense of pride. The neighborhood looked peaceful with wide streets, clean sidewalks, and tall trees that gave shade in the summer. Children rode their bicycles, families walked their dogs, and the lawns were trimmed neatly. To Ravi, it seemed like the kind of place where life could be calm and comfortable. He believed he had chosen well. One of the first things he did after moving in was to install a front gate. The gate was strong, made of metal, and painted a soft gray that matched the walls of his house. It was not too fancy but gave him a feeling of security. Ravi liked privacy, and the gate made him feel his home was separate from the busy movement of the street. He thought it also added beauty and value to the property. At first he noticed neighbors glancing at the gate when they walked by. Some gave polite smiles, others seemed curious, and a few looked surprised. He did not think too much about it because everyone had their own way of seeing things. He believed he had done nothing wrong. 2 weeks later, Ravi received an official-looking envelope in his mailbox. It came from the homeowners association known as the HOA. He opened it with interest but quickly felt his smile fade. The letter said his new gate must be removed. The reason given was that it blocked community access and made the neighborhood look less open. The letter explained that gates or barriers were not allowed in this community because the design was meant to give a sense of openness and friendship among neighbors. Ravi sat on his porch reading the letter again and again. His gate was on his own land. It did not cross the sidewalk and it did not disturb anyone. He wondered why the HOA cared so much about something so small. He had spent his hard-earned money to install it, and it gave him peace of mind. The words in the letter made him feel confused and a little angry. Later that evening, his neighbor Meena came to visit. She was kind and carried a plate of cookies to welcome him to the area. During their talk, she mentioned that she heard about the letter from the HOA. She explained that the association was known for being strict. They once told another neighbor to repaint his door because the shade of blue did not match the approved list of colors. They even sent warnings about the height of hedges and the design of mailboxes. Ravi listened carefully. He thanked Meena for the cookies and the advice, but told her he could not understand why a simple gate was a problem. It was safe, neat, and kept within his boundary. Meena only gave a small smile and said, "This is how the HOA works here. They like everything the same." A week later, another letter arrived, this time firmer in tone. It stated clearly that if the gate was not removed within 2 weeks, Ravi would have to pay a fine. The words felt heavy. He placed the letter on his table and stared at it for a long time. He had not moved to this house to get into arguments, but he also felt he could not just give in. That night, he sat outside on his porch. The street lights cast a soft glow, and the gate stood tall in front of him. He thought about the many years he spent working late shifts, the weekends he skipped rest to save more money, and the sacrifices he made to buy this home. Every detail reminded him of his effort. Why should someone else tell him he could not have a gate when it was on his own land? As the cool wind touched his face, Ravi felt a strong sense of determination. He whispered to himself that he was not going to remove the gate. If the HOA wanted to challenge him, then he would not only keep the gate but improve it. He would make it stronger and more beautiful. This was not just about a piece of metal. It was about his right to enjoy the home he worked so hard for. From that night onward, Ravi's simple gate became something much bigger in his heart. It became a symbol of his effort, his dreams, and his independence. He did not know what challenges were waiting for him, but he was ready to stand firm. Ravi woke up the next morning with the HOA letter still on his mind. It lay on his kitchen table, reminding him of the demand to remove his gate. He made tea and tried to calm himself, but the thought would not go away. Every sip of tea reminded him that his privacy and hard work were being questioned. He decided to take a walk around the neighborhood to understand things better. As he walked, he noticed that most houses looked very similar. They had the same style of fences, the same type of mailboxes, and even the same colors on the walls. It felt like everything had been planned to look alike. Ravi's gate stood out, but not in a bad way. In fact, he thought it made his house look safer and more welcoming at the same time. As he walked, an older neighbor named Karim waved at him. Karim had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. Ravi stopped and greeted him politely. Karim asked if he had received any letters from the HOA yet. Ravi gave a small smile and said, "Yes, about my gate." Karim sighed and shook his head. "They do this to everyone who tries something different," he said. "Years ago I wanted to plant fruit trees in my front yard. They told me no. They said it would not match the design of the community. I had to plant the same bushes everyone else had. That is how they work." Ravi listened carefully. He could see the frustration in Karim's eyes. He asked, "But isn't this our land? Why can't we choose what we like?" Karim shrugged. "That's the problem with HOAs. They say it is for the good of the community, but sometimes it feels like control." The talk with Karim made Ravi feel less alone. He was not the only one who thought the rules were unfair. As he walked back to his house, he felt a stronger desire to stand his ground. That evening, Ravi sat with a notebook and began to plan. If the HOA wanted him to remove the gate, then he would do the opposite. He would upgrade it. He would make it more stylish, more useful, and even more secure. Instead of being a problem, the gate could become an example of how a personal touch could still look beautiful in the community. He started with small sketches. He imagined adding wooden panels to soften the metal look, maybe some flower pots on the sides and lights that glowed at night. He thought about adding an automatic opener, which would make it more modern and convenient. The more he planned, the more excited he became. The gate was no longer just a barrier. It was a project, something creative that would prove he had every right to keep it. The next day, he went to a local shop that sold building materials. He talked with the shopkeeper about wood, paint, and lights. The shopkeeper, a cheerful man named Imran, asked why he was upgrading his gate. Ravi explained the situation. Imran laughed and said, "I like your spirit. If they want you to remove it, then make it the best gate in the whole neighborhood." Ravi returned home with supplies and began working. He sanded the wood, painted it a warm brown, and fixed the panels to the gate. He added flower pots at the sides, filling them with bright yellow and red flowers. At night, he installed soft solar lights that made the entrance glow gently. The gate now looked less like a wall and more like a welcoming entry. As days passed, neighbors noticed the changes. Some stopped to admire it. Mina, the kind neighbor who had given him cookies earlier, walked by and said, "Your gate looks even better now. It feels warm, not closed." Ravi smiled and thanked her. Her words gave him more confidence, but not everyone was pleased. A few days later, another letter came from the HOA. This one was longer and sterner. It said his upgrades did not change the rule. The gate still had to go. It warned him of possible fines if he did not comply. Ravi read the letter under the glow of his new gate lights. Instead of feeling discouraged, he felt a calm determination. He had not built anything ugly or harmful. He had created something safe and beautiful. The gate now stood as a symbol of effort, creativity, and pride. That night, as he locked the gate, he whispered to himself, "They want me to give up, but I will not. I will stand firm." What Ravi did not know was that the battle with the HOA was only just beginning, and his upgraded gate was about to bring even more attention than he had expected. The sun rose gently over the neighborhood, and the soft light made Ravi's upgraded gate glow warmly. Birds chirped in the trees, and neighbors walked their dogs as usual. But this time, many of them slowed down to look at his gate. Some smiled in approval, some whispered to each other, and a few shook their heads. It had quickly become the most talked-about feature in the community. Ravi noticed all the glances but kept his calm. He watered the flowers by the gate each morning, polished the wood panels, and checked the solar lights. To him, the gate was more than decoration. It was proof of his effort and a reminder that he had a right to protect his home. Later that week, Ravi received an unexpected knock at his door. When he opened it, 3 members of the HOA stood outside. Their faces were serious, and they carried a folder with papers inside. The leader of the group, a tall man named Ramesh, introduced himself politely but firmly. "Mr. Ravi," he began, "we have come to speak with you about the gate. You have ignored our letters, and now we must discuss this matter in person." Ravi invited them to step inside, but they preferred to talk at the doorstep. Ramesh explained that the HOA had rules approved by the entire community. These rules, he said, were in place to make sure the neighborhood looked open and welcoming. A gate, in their opinion, created separation and went against the spirit of unity. Ravi listened patiently. When they finished, he answered in a calm voice, "I respect the community and I respect the rules. But this gate is on my land. It does not block anyone. It is neat, safe, and even beautiful. I worked very hard to make it better, not worse. Why should I remove something that does no harm? The other two members exchanged looks. One of them, a woman named Parveen, spoke softly. We understand your point, but rules are rules. If we make an exception for you, others will also want changes. Ravi nodded but replied firmly. Sometimes rules need to be reviewed. Times change, ideas change. A community should grow, not stay frozen. My gate is not breaking the peace. It is showing individuality. The HOA members left after warning him again that fines would begin soon if he did not comply. Ravi watched them walk away, feeling a mix of frustration and strength. He knew the fight was not over. Later that evening, Meena came by again. She had overheard parts of the conversation from her porch. They are not going to give up easily, she said kindly. But I admire your courage. Not many people stand up to the HOA. Ravi smiled. I am not trying to fight. I just want fairness. This is my home. I should feel free here. The next day, something surprising happened. Karim, the older neighbor, came to Ravi's house carrying a basket of lemons from his backyard. I like what you said to them, Karim said. For years I wanted to speak up, but I never did. You are giving all of us courage. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some neighbors began to quietly support Ravi. They would stop by to compliment his gait or leave small notes of encouragement in his mailbox. Others remained silent but watched with interest. For the first time in many years, people were questioning whether the HOA's rules were too strict. Ravi felt a growing sense of responsibility. He realized this was no longer just about his gate. It was about freedom and the right of homeowners to make small personal choices without fear. Days later, a formal notice came from the HOA stating that Ravi had been fined for keeping the gate. The amount was not huge, but it was the first step. Ravi read it carefully and then placed it on his table. He did not panic. Instead, he decided to take the matter further. That evening, he researched online about homeowners' rights. He read stories of people in other places who had faced similar situations. Some had lost, but others had won by showing that the HOA rules were unreasonable. Ravi learned about meetings where homeowners could raise concerns and request changes to the rules. The more he read, the more hopeful he became. He realized he was not powerless. He could speak, he could organize, and he could gather support. His gate had started as a personal choice, but now it was the spark of something bigger. As he looked at the glowing lights around his gate that night, Ravi made a quiet decision. He would not only defend his gate, but also try to bring change to the community. The next HOA meeting was coming soon, and he planned to attend. What Ravi did not know was that the upcoming meeting would be unlike any other, and it would test both his patience and his courage. The day of the HOA meeting arrived. Ravi woke up early, feeling both nervous and determined. He dressed neatly, carried a small notebook, and walked toward the community hall where the meeting was held each month. The hall was a simple building near the park with rows of chairs and a long table at the front for the board members. When Ravi entered, he saw many neighbors already seated. Some nodded politely at him, some whispered quietly, and a few looked away. His gate had become a subject everyone knew about, and people were curious to see what would happen. The HOA board members sat at the front, their papers stacked neatly. Ramesh, the tall man who had visited Ravi earlier, sat in the center as the chairperson. Parveen was on his right, and another board member named Ajay sat on the left. Their expressions were serious. The meeting began with small announcements about lawn care, parking issues, and upcoming events. People listened quietly, but Ravi could feel the tension in the room. Everyone knew the gate issue was on the agenda. Finally, Ramesh cleared his throat and said, "The next matter is regarding Mr. Ravi's property. As you all know, he has installed a front gate, which is against community rules. Despite notices and warnings, he has refused to remove it. We must now decide the next steps." Murmurs filled the room. Some people nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable. Ravi stood up slowly, holding his notebook. His voice was calm but steady. "May I speak?" he asked. Ramesh gave a short nod and the room fell silent. Ravi took a deep breath and began. "I moved to this community because I believed it was a good place to live. I respect my neighbors and I respect the idea of unity, but I also believe a home should reflect the effort and dreams of the person who owns it. My gate is not blocking anyone. It is on my land, it is safe, and I even made it beautiful with flowers and lights. It brings me peace and security. Why should I be forced to remove something that harms no one? He paused for a moment, then continued. Rules are important, but rules should also be fair. If a rule feels too strict or outdated, then maybe it is time to review it. We are a community, yes, but we are also individuals. We should be allowed small freedoms without fear. The room grew very quiet. Ravi could see some neighbors nodding slowly. Karim, the older neighbor, raised his hand. I agree with Ravi, he said. Years ago, I was told I could not plant fruit trees in my yard. I followed the rule, but I never felt happy about it. If our homes all look the same, where is the joy of personal touch? Ravi's gate is not ugly, it is nice. I think we should allow some flexibility. A few others spoke up too. Mina said softly, I walk past his house every day. The gate does not feel closed. It feels welcoming. The flowers look cheerful. I do not see a problem. Of course, not everyone agreed. One neighbor, a man named Deepak, stood up and said, If we let him keep his gate, then others will want walls, fences, and all kinds of changes. Soon this place will lose its design. We all signed the agreement when we moved here. Rules are rules. The board listened to both sides carefully. Ramesh looked troubled but firm. The rules are clear, he said. The design of this neighborhood must remain open. If we allow one exception, it will cause problems later. Ravi raised his voice slightly, not in anger but with passion. Then let us discuss the rules. Let us vote. We are all homeowners here. Should we not have the right to decide together if a rule is fair? The suggestion surprised many. There had never been a direct vote on a single rule before. People usually followed the board's decisions. But Ravi's words gave them something new to think about. After some discussion, the board agreed to put the matter to a community vote. It would take place the following week. Each homeowner would have the chance to decide if personal gates should be allowed or not. When the meeting ended, Ravi walked out with mixed feelings. He had not won, but he had not lost either. For the first time, the decision was in the hands of the people, not just the board. Neighbors gathered around him outside the hall, some shaking his hand, some offering kind words. Karim smiled and said, You have started something important. No matter what happens, people will think differently from now on. That night, as Ravi stood by his glowing gate, he felt a sense of hope. The coming week would decide not only the future of his gate, but also the spirit of the community. The week leading up to the community vote felt like a storm of whispers, opinions, and quiet debates. Every corner of the neighborhood carried the same subject. Ravi's gate was no longer just a personal matter. It had become a question of choice and freedom for everyone who lived there. Ravi noticed the change each time he stepped outside. When he watered the flowers by his gate, some neighbors smiled warmly and waved. Others walked by quickly, avoiding eye contact. Children passing on bicycles pointed at the gate, asking their parents why it was so special. One morning, Karim visited Ravi with a notebook in hand. I have been talking to people, Karim said. Some agree with you strongly. They feel the rules have been too strict for too long. Others fear change. They worry it will make the neighborhood messy. This vote is going to be close. Ravi listened carefully. He did not want to pressure anyone, but he also knew this was his chance to explain his side clearly. He thanked Karim for his support and promised that no matter the result, he would stay respectful. As the days passed, small groups of neighbors began visiting him to ask questions. A young couple, Ayan and Lada, came by in the evening. They admired the lights around his gate and said, We like this. It feels warm. We want to add a small wooden fence to our yard, but we are afraid the HOA will stop us too. Ravi nodded and replied, That is exactly why this vote matters. It is not just about me. It is about giving everyone some freedom. Another day, Deepak, the neighbor who opposed the gate, stood outside talking with two families. His voice was loud enough for Ravi to hear. If we allow this, soon people will build walls. Then someone will paint their house bright pink. Another will put statues in the yard. We will lose our order. This place will stop looking like a proper community. Ravi sighed but stayed calm. He understood that fear of change was natural. Still, he believed beauty came from diversity, not from everything looking exactly the same. By the middle of the week, the board sent out papers explaining how the vote would work. Each homeowner would place their choice in a sealed box at the community hall. The options were simple: allow personal gates and fences with basic guidelines or continue to ban them completely. The results would be counted and announced at the end of the week. The evening before the vote, Ravi stood outside by his gate. The lights glowed softly and the flowers moved gently in the breeze. Meena stopped by with her daughter. She smiled and said, "Whatever happens tomorrow, you should know that you have given people courage. You spoke when many of us stayed silent." Her words touched Ravi deeply. He realized that even if the vote did not go his way, something had already changed. People were thinking, questioning, and speaking up. That was powerful in itself. The next morning, the hall was busy with neighbors arriving to cast their votes. Ravi walked there slowly, holding his paper in his hand. He greeted people politely, even those who had spoken against him. He knew this was not about anger, but about choice. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was tense but respectful. People dropped their papers into the box one after another. Karim gave Ravi a small nod of encouragement as he placed his vote. Deepak walked past with a firm expression, clearly confident in his side. When it was Ravi's turn, he placed his paper inside and stepped back. He felt a strange calm. His part was done. Now it was in the hands of the community. The board announced that the results would be shared in the evening. Until then, everyone had to wait. The hours passed slowly for Ravi. He tried to keep busy by cleaning his garden and fixing small things inside the house, but his thoughts kept returning to the vote. Finally, as the sun began to set, the board called everyone back to the hall. The crowd gathered, buzzing with quiet energy. Ramesh stood at the front with the sealed box beside him. He opened it carefully, pulling out the papers one by one as the other board members counted. The room was silent, every eye focused on the table. After what felt like forever, Ramesh cleared his throat. "The votes have been counted," he said. His voice carried a serious tone. "The result is very close. The community has spoken, and the decision is—" Ravi held his breath, waiting for the words that would shape the future of his gate and perhaps the entire neighborhood. The hall was silent as Ramesh held the paper in his hand. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for the result. Ravi stood near the back, his heart beating fast. He reminded himself to stay calm no matter what happened. Ramesh looked around the room before speaking. "The votes are counted. The result is very close. Out of all the homeowners, 32 have voted to allow gates and fences with basic guidelines. 30 have voted to continue the ban. By a difference of only 2 votes, the rule has been changed. Personal gates and fences will now be allowed under simple conditions." For a moment, the room stayed quiet as the words sank in. Then a wave of murmurs filled the hall. Some people clapped softly, others shook their heads, and a few looked surprised. Ravi felt a deep relief wash over him. He had not only defended his gate, but had also helped bring change to the community. He did not smile too widely, but his eyes shone with quiet pride. Karim, standing nearby, patted his shoulder. "You did it," he whispered with a grin. Not everyone was happy, of course. Deepak stood up sharply. "This is a mistake," he said. "This neighborhood will lose its order. You will see problems in the future." He left the hall without waiting for a reply. Some followed him out, while others stayed behind to discuss the new rule. The board explained the guidelines quickly. Gates and fences would be allowed if they were safe, neat, and not overly tall. They should blend with the house and not block sidewalks. With those conditions, homeowners could add their own touches. The vote had spoken, and the board had to respect it. When the meeting ended, many neighbors came up to Ravi. Some thanked him, some simply nodded, and a few admitted they were unsure but willing to see how things turned out. For the first time, Ravi felt like part of something bigger than himself. That evening, as he walked back home, the sun was setting, and the golden light made his gate glow warmly. Neighbors passing by gave him small smiles. Meena waved from her porch and said, "Congratulations. You have given us more freedom," Ravi replied gently. "It was not just me. It was everyone who believed in change." The next few days were filled with new energy in the neighborhood. Families began to talk about what small changes they might make. One couple planned to add a wooden fence for their garden. Another thought about putting a decorative arch near their walkway. The place that once felt controlled now felt open to creativity. But along with excitement, there was also worry. Some homeowners whispered that things would get out of hand. They feared the neighborhood would lose its clean, uniform look. Rumors spread that the board might try to tighten the rules again in the future. Ravi stayed calm through it all. He spent his mornings caring for the flowers at his gate and polishing the wood panels. To him, the result was not just about winning. It was about proving that people had a voice. One afternoon, Karim invited Ravi for tea in his backyard. As they sat under a lemon tree, Karim said, "You know, I planted this tree long ago even though the HOA did not like it. Now maybe I can add 2 more. That is the kind of change you have started." Ravi smiled softly. "I am glad people feel free to choose. That is what makes a place feel like home." However, the board was not ready to give up easily. Ramesh called another small meeting and told the community that while the vote was final, they would be watching closely. "If people abuse this new rule," he warned, "we will have to act again." Ravi understood their position. Rules were needed, but he believed balance was possible. He was ready to show that his gate and the freedom it represented could bring beauty rather than problems. That night he stood once again by his glowing gate. The neighborhood around him was quiet, but in that silence he felt a new beginning. The vote had given people choice, but it had also placed responsibility on him to set an example. He knew challenges were still ahead. Some neighbors were waiting to see if his gate would truly fit in. Others were watching for any reason to complain. Yet deep in his heart, Ravi was ready. His journey was not finished. In fact, it had only just begun. The neighborhood woke up the next morning with a quiet excitement in the air. Ravi stepped outside and noticed that his gate looked even more inviting in the soft sunlight. The flowers were fresh, the wood gleamed, and the solar lights reflected a gentle sparkle. People walking by slowed to glance at it, smiling as they admired the neat design. Over the next few days, a small number of neighbors began making subtle changes to their own properties. A couple down the street added small wooden fences around their garden. A family near the park decorated their porch with colorful flowers. Nothing was extreme and nothing blocked the sidewalks, but it created a lively and cheerful feeling throughout the community. Ravi felt proud. The neighborhood was slowly learning that personal touches could be beautiful and safe at the same time. One afternoon, Meena came by with a basket of vegetables from her garden. "I think this is a good change," she said, glancing at Ravi's gate. "People are starting to enjoy small improvements without disturbing anyone." "Your courage showed them that." Ravi nodded, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction. "I just wanted people to have a choice," he said. "A small choice can make a big difference." Not everyone was happy with the changes. Deepak continued to voice his concerns to anyone who would listen. "Look at them," he said one morning to a group of neighbors. "They are making the neighborhood messy. Soon everyone will want their own design, and we will lose the order we had." Some neighbors whispered quietly in response, unsure if they should challenge him. Others quietly ignored his complaints, believing that change could be positive. Ravi understood the tension. Change was never easy, but he knew the community could find balance if everyone acted responsibly. Ravi also realized that his own role had changed. He was no longer just a homeowner. He had become an example. Parents now pointed to his gate when talking to their children about creativity, and other neighbors asked for advice on flowers, wood panels, and solar lights. Ravi happily shared tips, showing that a personal project could be neat, safe, and pleasing to everyone. One evening, Karim invited Ravi to a small gathering in his backyard. Several neighbors attended, each bringing snacks and drinks. The atmosphere was friendly, with people sharing ideas about small improvements to their homes. Ravi noticed even some of the more skeptical neighbors quietly taking notes. "You see," Karim said, smiling, "your gate started this. You made people see that small changes can be good." Ravi laughed softly. "I never imagined my gate would inspire so much," he admitted. "It was just meant to be my little space." The board, however, continued to monitor the changes closely. Ramesh called a few meetings to ensure that homeowners followed the new guidelines. Ravi attended some of these meetings not to argue, but to answer questions and help neighbors understand the rules. His calm and friendly approach eased tensions and encouraged cooperation. One day, a new family moved into the neighborhood. Their children ran excitedly toward Ravi's gate, fascinated by the flowers and lights. The parents smiled and thanked Ravi for showing that personal touches could fit in without causing problems. Ravi welcomed them warmly, feeling proud that his actions had made a positive impression. Weeks passed, and slowly the neighborhood began to feel different. It was still clean and organized, but now it had more personality. Small fences, flower pots, and decorative touches created a friendly and lively atmosphere. Neighbors smiled at each other more often, shared tips, and helped one another maintain their yards. Ravi often stood by his gate in the evenings, watching the sunset and the lights glow softly. The change in the neighborhood filled him with a quiet satisfaction. He realized that one small decision, standing up for his gate, had brought both challenge and growth. It had tested patience, courage, and communication, but it had also inspired creativity and unity. He knew the future would still bring challenges. Some homeowners might push the limits and the board would remain watchful. But Ravi felt confident that the neighborhood had learned an important lesson. Rules were important, but fairness, respect, and small personal choices could make a community stronger and happier. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Ravi smiled at his gate. It was more than metal and wood now. It was a symbol of courage, patience, and positive change. And for the first time, he felt that the home he had dreamed about was not only safe, but truly alive with possibility. The following weeks in the neighborhood felt brighter and more lively than ever. Ravi's gate had become a symbol of change and inspiration. Neighbors who had once whispered doubts now greeted him with smiles, some even stopping to ask for advice about flowers or fences. The small adjustments they made brought color and life to the streets, while still keeping the area clean and safe. One morning, Ravi walked through the neighborhood to check on the little changes around him. He noticed a family painting their mailbox in soft colors that matched their house. Another neighbor carefully planted flowers along the edge of her yard, making the sidewalk look cheerful. Children ran by, laughing and waving at him as they passed his gate. Ravi felt proud and happy to see how small personal touches could create a warm and welcoming atmosphere. Karim came walking up behind him with a smile. "You see this?" he said. "This is what happens when people feel they can make their own choices. Your courage started all of this." Ravi smiled and shook his head. "I only wanted my home to feel right for me. I never imagined it would inspire others," he said, "but I'm glad it did." Mina stopped by later in the day with her daughter holding a small basket of fresh flowers. She placed them by Ravi's gate. "The neighborhood is happier now," she said softly. "People are talking to each other more, helping each other, and even smiling at strangers. All because someone stood up for a small idea." Ravi felt a quiet satisfaction. It had not been an easy journey. The letters, warnings, and discussions with the HOA had tested his patience and determination. But every step had been worth it. He realized that standing for what he believed in, while still respecting others, could create positive change. Even Deepak, the neighbor who had strongly opposed the gate, began to soften. One afternoon, he walked by Ravi's gate and said quietly, "I still have concerns, but I see that people are happy. Your gate is neat, and nothing bad has happened. Maybe I judged too quickly." Ravi nodded politely. He did not need anyone to fully agree. Seeing some understanding was enough. The HOA continued to monitor the neighborhood, but they also noticed the positive impact of the new rule. The community looked well cared for, lively, and harmonious. Meetings were calmer now, as homeowners showed that they could enjoy personal touches responsibly. Ravi's gate had become more than a simple barrier. It had become a center of conversation, a point of inspiration, and a symbol of balance between rules and freedom. People began to appreciate individuality while still respecting the community's needs. Families added small fences or decorations without fear, and children's laughter filled the streets more than ever before. One evening, Ravi stood outside as the sun set, casting warm light over his gate. The flowers glowed gently, the wooden panels reflected the last rays of the sun, and the soft lights he had installed twinkled like tiny stars. Neighbors waved from their yards, children played, and for the first time, Ravi felt that the community truly belonged to everyone who lived there. Karim walked by and said, "You know, this neighborhood feels different now." "It feels alive," Ravi smiled. "Yes, it does. And it started with something small, a single gate and the courage to keep it. Sometimes small things can make the biggest difference." As night fell, Ravi locked his gate and looked at the peaceful street. The journey had been challenging, full of tension and at times even lonely. Yet the result was worth every moment. His home felt safe, his effort was respected, and his community had grown stronger, more thoughtful, and more connected. He realized that change did not always come from loud voices or force. Sometimes it came quietly, from one person standing firm, being patient, and believing in fairness. His gate was a reminder of that, a story told in wood, metal, and flowers shining softly under the stars. Ravi went inside his house with a content heart. Outside, the neighborhood rested, glowing under the calm night. Inside, he knew his work had made a difference, not just for him, but for everyone who lived there. The home he had dreamed of had become more than a place to live. It had become a place that inspired courage, respect, and hope.